When we talk about weeds, we may not all have the same plants in mind. Some plants are most universally considered an annoyance in the garden. In other cases, one gardener's weed problem may be another gardener's native plant collection. In this section, we'll talk about what characteristics make a plant a weed. As a reminder, remember to frame your thoughts on weeds and weed management in terms of integrated pest management, or IPM. Knowing the characteristics of a weed is an important building block of IPM. Knowledge about the pest, in this case the weeds, can inform the management tool or tactic you decide to use. You may have wondered why certain plants are considered a weed. Any plant could in theory be a weed. The following characteristics are shared among weedy plants. First, weeds are really good travelers. They have developed structural modifications to get their progeny, otherwise known as seeds, into the environment so their species can spread. Some good examples of these are pontoon-like floats of curlydock, used for transport and water. Cocklebur with spines for attachment and travel on animals. Puncture vine with spines embedded in a bicycle tire. And the parachute-like seeds of common dandelion for wind dispersal. Seeds of weedy plants can be dormant in the soil for many years. They can wait long amounts of time until favorable conditions come along. With some weed species, that can be beyond 50 years. Once they have the resources they need, light or water, they will come out of dormancy, germinate, grow, and reproduce. When seed accumulates in the soil like this, we call it a seed bank, and there can be millions of seeds per acre just waiting to germinate. You can see that when this pile of soil was turned over, it exposed many of the seeds in the seed bank to water and light, allowing them to germinate and grow. In your gardens, you will often see patches of weeds pop up after digging or rototilling because you brought seeds in the soil seed bank to the soil surface. Some plant species tend to have expansive root systems. They give the weedy plants a competitive advantage over other plants. Below-ground competition for water and nutrients is as important as above-ground competition for light and space. Big root systems help confer drought resistance. They are efficient at getting whatever water is to be found, which is why you may still see some weeds alive and growing when everything else is suffering during dry weather. For example, Canada thistle can have several miles of root underneath a 30-foot diameter colony. Weeds are also excessive resource consumers. The resources consumed are then unavailable to neighboring plants, which gives the weedy plants another leg up on competition. A great example of this is the tamarisk, also known as salt cedar. This plant can consume up to 200 gallons of water per day. It is spread throughout the U.S., but is particularly a bad problem in the Southwest, where it is highly invasive. Weedy plants are also very efficient in situations where there are few resources. Weeds are good at taking up water and nutrients in resource-poor environments, like in the rocky, dry ground as shown in the picture on the far right. The weedy grass shown in the picture on the left is very water efficient and can survive with only about 2 inches of rain per year. Another characteristic of weeds are their ability to reproduce early in their life cycle, particularly when conditions are poor. This gives their species an advantage. If the times get tough, they're able to reproduce and create another generation that can wait in the seed bank until conditions are favorable for germination and growth. Weedy plants produce lots of seeds. It's their reproductive strategy to increase their chance the species will survive. Instead of investing a lot of energy in making one big seed, weeds can saturate the environment with many, many seeds. So many seeds also means a lot of genetic diversity stored in the seed bank, which is an advantage in a changing environment. Only those with the best adapted genetic makeup will survive in the conditions. To put it in perspective, the weed of the small broomrape produces 1 million seeds per stalk, and there can be 1,500 stalks per square meter. That's a lot of seeds. Weeds are also adaptable to their environment. One adaptation we've seen recently is the emergence of herbicide-resistant weeds. One way they can adapt from generation to generation is through the selection of plants with the genes to help them survive in the environment. Herbicide-resistant weeds illustrate this. A population of weeds can be sprayed with an herbicide, which you can think of like an unfavorable environment. And while most of them die, a very small number may have the genetic makeup that allows them to be resistant to an herbicide. These individuals will reproduce. The next generation will be a larger percentage of weeds with herbicide resistance. As the cycle continues, more and more weeds will be herbicide resistant. In other words, the weed species has found a way to adapt and survive the unfavorable condition. Another way weeds adapt to their environment is through their growth habit. Here you can see two dandelions. The one in the lawn, which is mown, has a compact, low-to-the-ground growth habit which can now avoid the blades of the mower. However, notice the tall leggy dandelion growing among the other plants. This plant does not have the risk of being mown off and is also competing for light with the surrounding plants. It has adapted by growing taller to fit its environment so it can be successful. Have you ever thought that some weeds are kind of pretty? Well, you're probably right, and sometimes that's because it started out as an ornamental plant. Plants on this list started out as ornamental plants that were intentionally brought to new areas and planted because people thought they were really wonderful. Over time, though, they became really invasive and persistent in the environment, like kudzu, shown in this picture. Invasive plants are often mentioned when we talk about weeds. Invasive plants are defined specifically as non-native plants that cause environmental and/or economic harm to the areas that they invade. It's important to note that not all weed plants are invasive by definition, but all invasive plants are weeds.